Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'll just give it a few seconds. Looks like we are live. I would like to say to everyone who is with us, thank you so much for your support, to all the moderators for joining us today for this live stream with a guest that I have never had before. This is the first time that I have David BAUMBLATT with me. I want to, before I give David space and the platform to go forward with his story, which is very important, I would like to say that I usually don't invite people to my channel who send me emails with presentation of their story. So I'm very, very selective and very skeptical because I receive a lot of emails. However, the email that I received from David really got my attention. I've watched several videos where he had given interviews, and I would like to introduce you to David, because I think the story that he has to share with us would bring a lot of value and a lot of insight and information. The links to David two links are down below this video, where you can find his work and his latest book, very important book that I will ask about, of course, to my other platforms as well. Scroll down below this live stream and let's start from here. Welcome to my channel, David.
Thank you very much, Anya. Appreciate having me on board.
So, David, you have worked for U.S. Army. You served for the U.S. Army, and you worked in FBI, for FBI, of course, in the United States. Currently, you are based in Hong Kong, as I'm aware of.
Correct.
Where shall we start? Shall we start?
Sure.
What was your role in FBI, really? How long did you work there? And is this important in this moment, to share with your story as well?
I mean, sure. I mean, it's definitely part of it. And so I was in the FBI in 2004, and I quit the FBI in 2007. I was a special agent assigned to the National Security Branch, working foreign counterintelligence. People now might be a little familiar with the FBI whistleblowers. I joined significantly before them. Again, I joined in 2004. When I left in 2007, I wrote a letter to then Senator Chuck Grassley explaining the abuses that I saw. He never responded, just like the politicians are ignoring me now. But I wasn't suspended from the FBI. I quit. I didn't want to be a part of them, and we could talk about it more. But I believe that the FBI, along with these other American globalist government like the military, are turning more into a negative than a positive. They're not helping the American citizens. And I say again, and I'm sure we're going to extrapolate on this, but China's a threat, Russia's a threat. I'm not denying that. But the number one threat to the Americans who value your faith, your family, and your freedom is the American globalist government and the American globalist corporations. Nothing's a bigger threat than that. And the FBI is the most powerful American government agency there is, because they combine both law enforcement and intelligence combined. And I could explain more about it. And obviously, I'm under investigation now. And I think the key is what most people don't realize is, I think many people might be familiar with FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I mean, more of this is coming out. Again, the reason I never went public in 2007 when I quit was three reasons. One, I come from a strong leadership background. I graduated West Point, that's the United States Military Academy. Nobody wants to listen to a complainer. Even my videos are censored now. Two, I don't think anyone would believe me, especially back then, 2007, the war on terror. And three, you don't want to mess with the FBI. They're very, very powerful. So now, though, I think people are starting to realize what this is about. But to make it really simple to the American public, or even to foreign nationals, if the FBI, there's two FBIs. There's the FBI criminal branch and FBI national security branch. Again, it's the best comparison would be to England, MI5, and Scotland Yard combined. So both combined. So it is easier for the FBI to designate you a bank robber, or it was the opposite. It's harder for the FBI to designate you as a bank robber or a drug dealer. This is the criminal branch. Than it is for the FBI to designate you as a terrorist or a spy. There's much lower standards, and this shouldn't be. For instance, when I was in the FBI, again, you got to remember the war on terror. If you're an American citizen, if you're a Muslim, and you're not doing anything illegal, oh, you're under investigation by the FBI. Just is. Same thing with the January 6th. You illegally entered the Capitol, you're a terrorist. So I am right now a national security threat. Why? Well, I'm under a national security investigation by the FBI because they think I'm a threat. It's easier than you think. And to the American people, if you don't understand this danger, study East Germany, study the Stasi, because that's exactly what the FBI is turning into.
David, thank you. So here I want to ask you, you've mentioned that letter that you said you were writing about the abuse. So here I want to ask you what forms of abuse you mean. And the second question here that I just lost because I forgot. So,
No
okay, what kind of abuse is really that? And actually, here is the question. Here is the question. What is the form of threat for the regular American citizen that at this moment, someone who is, let's say, not involved in anything, just regular living citizen in the United States, what threat FBI can cause to such a person?
So I'll try to handle them in terms of what the FBI can do. Again, it's the most powerful agency in America. They can destroy your life. Again, we don't have time to go into all my story. Maybe I'll come back and I'll explain it. But the first is they'll destroy your life. I think the key, what people have to understand is this. We assume U.S. citizens were living in a society that the FBI needs probable cause, evidence of illegal wrongdoing for them to open up investigation from you. And that's generally how it is in the criminal branch. I say generally, there's still corruption in the criminal branch. But I'm saying in the national security branch, you as an American citizen, they could deem you as a threat. What did you do? I don't know. You support Trump. This is getting political now. So you didn't do anything illegal. Like me, I've never done anything illegal. You might have done suspicious activities. You might be a far right, meaning the same reason to the American public. I just want to make it simple. The same reason that it's easy now for people to accuse you of being a racist, of being a white supremacist, of being a Nazi. I mean, we throw these terms out like they're meaningless. The FBI will do the same thing and designate you as a terrorist. And you might say, but what did I do? Where's the evidence? And it's the same reason someone says you're racist and says, what did I do? The difference is the FBI has a lot of power. And once the FBI opens up that investigation with no probable cause, no evidence, now they're investigating you. And if they find nothing on you that you're a spy or a terrorist, however, they find out other stuff. You're cheating on your taxes, you're doing this. Now, that was an illegal investigation because they went around the Fourth Amendment. So they thought you were a terrorist. They found no evidence. But we all know, you start digging into people, we all have little things, because that's the power of the FBI. So they use national security. They override the Fourth Amendment. Now they're looking at you. They don't find anything national security-wise, but they could find something criminal, something as simple as you're cheating on your taxes, and now you're destroyed. That's the difference between the FBI and a normal. So, for instance, MI5. MI5 is spying on British citizens, but only for national security reasons, only national. So if they find something criminal, they are not going to be able to do it. Now, is there corruption there? Maybe, but in the FBI, it's the same organization. It was so bad in the FBI when I joined in 2004, most Americans don't know, we were this close of splitting. Then President Bush told Director Mueller, who was the FBI director, that if another terrorist attack happens, we're going to split. And the reason what I'm saying is when you have intelligence and law enforcement combined, it creates a very powerful organization, but it's also like two different cultures in one. It's a two-headed dog. It's almost so powerful you can't control it. So the point is the FBI should have an iron curtain between criminal and national security. They should not go back and forth, but they do. And that's the problem, because it's a lower standard to investigate you for national security. They don't really need that much evidence. But while they're investigating you, if they find criminal, now you're in trouble with criminal, and that's not how it should be. But the difference between me and millions of other American citizens is this: I'm being illegally spied upon by the FBI. Well, you are too. The difference is one, I know about it, but two, the damages on me is very high, because when you spy on people, and I could explain it this episode or next, but the point being is don't fool yourself. You're an American citizen. You're doing nothing illegal. Don't fool yourself. The FBI is spying on you. Now, many people would say, well, if I'm not doing anything illegal, I have nothing to hide, and let them spy on me. Okay, have fun with that. But I'm just saying, if you think the U.S. citizens should be open kimono because we're not doing anything illegal and we should not have privacy, do you think the U.S. government's going to do the same? Because the U.S. government's not doing anything corrupt, right? You think the government is going to be open? If there's no privacy, there's no democracy. Privacy is sacred. We have to keep it. And the way this FBI is going, you could kiss your privacy goodbye. Again, you got to relate it to the East German Stasi. That's where this FBI is going.
So thank you, David. Let me ask you here, when you left United States and you moved to China, and then you went back to US to visit, right? Have you been going back? How is that for you? Like, are you still doing this? Is there any danger when you're coming back? How does it look like?
Yeah, so I don't go back anymore. I don't know if there's an arrest warrant for me. I've reached out to the FBI. This is all documented. I've reached out to the FBI. I've wrote every single congressman and senator, the inspector general for the Department of Justice. The last trip that I took to America was in August of 2019. It was a flight from Taiwan to Chicago. And I've done many interviews where I go into detail, but generally speaking, I am not welcome back in America. When I go, I am detained, searched, interrogated, under covert surveillance, deceived, humiliated, and physically assaulted. I get treated better in foreign countries than America. We have a southern border where illegals are flooding into America with open arms and free taxpayer money. Come on into America. And you're telling me, an American citizen, when I go in, oh, I'm under surveillance from the very get-go. Something is going wrong. And the reason I'm being ignored on social media is, I'm telling you, in my case, the government went too far, illegally, immorally, and they don't want this story coming out. Because I've spent more than 15 years in the government. If you don't think the government goes too far and does immoral, illegal activities, you need to wake up. They went too far with me. And also, you got to remember, if you're an American citizen and you're located in America, the amount of tools the FBI has to spy upon you, you're never going to find out. I mean, it's going to be rare for you to know, because they have so much command and control in America. But because I'm located in overseas, it's harder for the FBI to spy upon me. So they had to push the boundaries. Hence, that's why it was easier for me to understand what was going on. But if I was located in America, I don't think I would have known, because that's how vulnerable you are living in America to the FBI. You don't, your house, everything. I mean, even in the FBI, I could explain it, covert entry, phone taps. It's very difficult. But because I'm located overseas, they had to do what's called extraordinary measures. And because they did these measures, they left trail, and I was able, and damages too.
Mm-hmm. So what citizenship do you still have? You still have US citizenship, or you have?
No, so obviously I'm an American citizen, and I mentioned it to the in my video to the congressmen and senators. And the point is either allow me back in America to be treated like a normal US citizen, or you can revoke my citizenship. And to the American people, know this, and I've given interviews on this, the straw that broke the camel's back for me to go public. I never wanted to write a book. I never wanted to go public. If the investigation with the FBI would have stayed domestically, I would have never went public, and I just would have never went back to America, which is still damages. I still would like to see my family, business trips. It's still impeding my constitutional rights of freedom. But you can't mess with the FBI. The FBI went overseas, destroyed my career. I could explain it, and they will never stop. And I've communicated to them they're ignoring me, which is also when I wrote the book. If you wrote a book as an FBI agent, just like CIA, you have to get authority clearance from that agency to write the book. I never got authority clearance from the FBI. Why? Well, they're ignoring me and they're not speaking to me, so I'm not going to wait around. But this whole thing is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. And for me to be censored and not being spoken to by their government, it just raises it to the American people. Something very strange is going on. The government's hiding.
So you said they went international, meaning what
Sure.
country was it? Where was it?
Sure. So what happened is, if you want to see 3 videos on Rumble, watch 1, 2, 3. So my last time I was in China, I was working for Amazon. What a corrupt corporation. Again, just watch episode 3 on Rumble. It was during the COVID, the COVID pandemic. It got so bad that I told Amazon, I got to leave China. The Amazon said, if then quit. They just wouldn't do it. So I literally quit Amazon and I left China. I went to a Western friendly country. I'm specifically not giving out the name now. I will. There's a reason to it. I went to a Western friendly country. I had a work visa. I had a job, everything lined up, and I was going to become a citizen in this country and make that country my home. Again, it was a Western friendly country that you could become a citizen. I was
Can I
kicked
ask you
out of this.
something? Can I ask you something here? European Union country? You don't have European Union or not?
Yeah, I don't want to say the country. It was a
Okay, all right.
and the reason being is it's common sense. If I was in Russia or China, the FBI doesn't have influence, for obvious reasons. So I was in a Western friendly country where the FBI does have influence. That's why. And of course, too, most Western friendly countries are the only countries where you could actually become a naturalized citizen, so that was another part. But I don't want to name the country, but I am no longer allowed for the rest of my life to ever go to that country again to apply for any type of work visa. And of course, I wasn't doing anything illegal in this country. If I was, I'd probably be in jail. But the FBI, that was actually the second time the FBI destroyed my career after the FBI. And you could say, talk about anger. I went through the roof and I said, that's it. That's it. And I said, we're going public. And because that's the only remotely thing that the FBI is remotely intimidated about is you going public. But you're going to have to get millions and millions of people for them to be intimidated. I mean, I've got like 5,000 subscribers on Rumble. They don't care about me. They're going to just sort of, dust me aside, and that's it. But I'm telling you, the American people, one day this government is going to crush your life, and you're going to raise your hand and you're going to say, can I get some help? I'm a military veteran and I'm being ignored by my government. Something is wrong with this story, completely wrong. We all know it.
So what do you think it will take for that organization to be completely either changed or removed?
Yeah,
is it possible? Do you think
No.
is there a chance with changing the
Yeah,
power completely?
Yeah, and I don't like to put myself in the ball game of the regular, you could say, FBI whistleblowers, because I'm looking at a bigger picture, which is called Civil War, Collapse, and Revolution. And I think a key phrase is, why did I leave the U.S. military? Why did I leave the FBI? And why did I leave America? I say again, it's weak men, meaning our country in America is going to fall. No one's going to defeat this FBI, but we are eventually, and I could explain why, and all great empires sooner or later fall. We know that from history. We know that. But I don't believe, and I made it clear, I think Donald Trump is the best president in my entire lifetime. Is he going to fix it? Not no, but hell no, he's not. Unless he leads us into a civil war, that could be. But the point is, this system is beyond anyone. And this is sort of a train wreck. It's probably going to be economic. I'm predicting an economic, more than a recession. We're talking an economic depression. And remember, you have to understand, when I talk about this stuff, I predicted this in 2005. And there's a phrase in the military called lead, follow, or get out of the way. That's why I left in 2010. I mean, you didn't have to go to China. You can go to another country. But the point being is this whole thing about America collapsed. This is not new to me. I knew this. That's why I left in 2010. But to the American people, it's going to get worse. If you think you've seen it bad now, so how are we going to fix the FBI or the CIA or this? This system is going down. And you got to remember, too, if if more and more American citizens or even military veterans like me feel betrayed, that's the title of my book, Patriots Betrayed, who's going to defend this country anymore? Who's going to raise their hand? I was raised, I have family members that my family immigrated to America in 1850. We fought in the Civil War and all the wars. My father fought in Vietnam, and obviously I'm a West Point grad. I think it's going to be the end of the line with my family of serving in the American military. So, and you're seeing that now. The American military ranks are not being, they're not. No one's joining. Now we're having more foreigners, but this system is going down. So there's something bigger than the FBI. But don't fool yourself. If you step out of line in America, I don't know why you're worried about China or Russia. The FBI is going to be knocking on your door with guns, and they're going to take away your freedom.
David, so how do you see this coming election in the United States?
Yeah, so what's interesting is, obviously, I'm born and raised in New York. I don't ever remember growing up, number one, thinking, are we going to get through the election? I don't ever remember growing up. And two, when I grew up, Republicans and Democrats, whatever, you had a little differences, maybe a little debate, but you got along. It wasn't a big deal. Notice the polarization that's happening. It's getting worse and worse. We're going more far right, more far left. This country is not. So I would say we're gonna just assume that Donald Trump wins, even though he might not. But what I want to do is, because I think a lot of Trump supporters have this false sense of security that, well, if Donald Trump wins, he's going to fix everything. Remember, he was already the president for 4 years, so not doing very well now. So I have a feeling that if he wins, the corporations who run us will allow him to play his game. He'll leave after 4 years, and the country's going to go down again. That's number one. Two, he may truly say, I'm going to change the system. If he does, he'll be taken out like John F. Kennedy. They will take him out. Or he may lead a civil war. But I'm saying either way, and you always have to remember, too, when we talk about violence and everyone's worried about violence, how did America form? Well, it formed on revolution. Don't fool yourself. Our founding fathers founded America through illegal activity, through violent activity. So America is no stranger to violence. I mean, we export violence overseas, the military, we're violence in America. So when I talk about violence, people are like, no violence. Are you kidding me? We're probably one of the most violent countries in the history of this earth. It's coming, people. We are a gun-loving nation. And don't fool yourself. I do believe that sometimes violence is the answer to solve the problem. And again, if you're proud of America, America was formed on violence.
Unfortunately, I agree with you. I don't know if you know, I lived in the United States as well. I'm not American citizen. And I lived there for 17 years. I left in 2022.
Well,
and I have to tell you, yeah, and the last in those last years of me living there, especially being there during the 2020 election and during the Schmovit, I call it, which is pandemic time, I've seen a lot, and the illusion has been completely poof for me. I realized that it's very, very dangerous place for me to stay, and I left. I'm not saying that many places in the world are safe. However, there are still, in my opinion, few safe places. And I would like to now jump just for a moment to China. Why did you choose China, David? I'm actually very curious about it.
Sure.
And do you feel safe there? Do you feel safe there?
Good and bad. I'm in Hong Kong, so Hong Kong's a little different. Maybe people understand the whole thing with Hong Kong. It's like a Singapore in a way. But let me explain a little China. I know more about China than anyone in the United States government. So I started studying Chinese back in 1995. I'm fluent in Mandarin Chinese to the point that I actually could pass for Chinese on the telephone. And so very familiar with it. Now, why did I initially go? So when I left the FBI, I went straight to what's called the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. I did some master's degrees. So this is 2007. And Harvard was inundated with American corporations, Goldman Sachs, go to China. China's the future. That's where the money is. And because I could speak Chinese, it made sense. But the China that I went to in 2010, it's different. Now, I'm a nationalist, and I mentioned this many times. I think the Republicans and the Democrats suck. I think the future war, you could say, is between the nationalists and the globalists. So I'm a nationalist, but the situation in China, though, expats are leaving, and I could tell who's on YouTube, who's really speaking the truth about China, who's being paid. So I'm overall positive about China, and I don't believe it is the number one threat to America. But China has definitely changed since I went there in 2010, where it has become less hospitable to foreigners. I think it'll get better. It goes through ups and downs. There's no doubt about it. But China is definitely, and obviously I'm in Hong Kong, which is a little different. So what I think, though, the main thing that's kind of, you could say, pushing China and America together is many times they use the corporations. So the globalist corporations, as we know in America, we're being flooded by immigrants, to include the Chinese. Well, you can't really blame the Chinese. You blame the corporations because they like cheap labor and they like obedient labor. So the corporations are destroying our country. It's not really the Chinese, and I could explain more. At the same time, our globalist corporations, they need a war. They always need a war. And sooner or later, they're going to need a war with China, with Taiwan. But the American people, we don't need to go to war with China. My view of Taiwan, of Tibet, even with Xinjiang, I talk about the Uyghurs, but ultimately, that's China, and let them do it. And what I find so amazing with Americans is we have this bleeding heart, a policeman, like a world's policeman, over all these other countries in the world, like Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan. We want to save the world, but at the same time, our own country is falling down. It's falling apart. Our own citizens, we have homeless military veterans in America. Nobody cares about them. But man, do we care about the Taiwanese, the Ukrainians, and the Israelis? Doesn't make any sense. I'm a nationalist. It's time to put America first. And a lot of these overseas boondoggles, and that's what they are, they're military boondoggles, stay out of it. So again, if you ask me about China, don't fool yourself. In some ways, I go harder on China than the American government. In some ways, and I'll explain. But in other ways, I'm a nationalist. Leave them alone. It's China. Let them do their thing. I view America as the bully that's looking for a war.
I agree. However, I don't agree that they care about Ukrainians or Israelis or others because they actually fight with the last Ukrainian. So all they care about is to launder the money and to take advantage of the country at the end of the day. So what are the biggest lies about China, David, in your opinion?
I would say the one biggest lie is this view that China wants to be the global superpower like America. You got to remember, America, we inherited our culture a lot from Britain. Remember the British Empire? We're very similar. Our intelligence, our military, our Revolutionary War. We have a lot of British DNA in America. So the British was the empire, we're the empire, and we assume that any other country wants to replicate that, not China. My view on China is, now I do believe China wants to be the regional power of Asia. We're talking Greater Asia. They will become the political, economic, military regional power of Asia. Do I believe they're going to be the global superpower like America in the world? Not only no, never going to happen, but they don't even want to do that. It's not in their DNA. So this feeling that China wants to become America as the world superpower, never. But I do agree, though, in Asia, China is going to be the regional power of Asia, whether you like it or not.
All right, so now let's talk about those corporations who apparently run the world, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
Well, they run the world, but let me show you a little different between the Western world and the non-Western world because it relates to your question. In the Western world, the Western world, maybe not Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe could be a little different, but Western Europe, Australia, Canada, America, New Zealand, the corporations run us. They're our masters, number one. So they have the power. In the non-Western world, it's not the corporations, it's the government. Trust me, in China, you could be the richest guy. You go up against this government, you're done. So the corporations have the power in the West. The governments have the power in the non-West. That's number one. Number two is ideology. Our ideology in the West is globalism. Whether you know it, whether you agree with it, or you understand it, we are globalists. We are infused with globalism. The ideology in the non-Western world is nationalism. Now, why is America going to fall? You cannot have a nation long-term where your superior ideology is globalism. Sooner or later, and we're witnessing, our nation will disappear. That's the difference between nationalism and globalism. So it's basically, it's going to be a war ideology between nationalism and globalism. Globalism, the corporations have the power. Nationalism, the governments have the power. And we can argue pro and con either way. But ultimately, if you want to have a nation, you better put nationalism above globalism.
Yes. So are you saying, which we know, most of us here, that the politicians are bought by those large corporations? We're talking United States,
Sure.
European Union, many countries. How is it in Asia? Are there politicians who, because as I'm aware, again, I'm not an expert, I'm just a regular person who has a YouTube channel and is trying to find the answer, David. Biden, not just Biden, but many politicians who are collaborating with many Chinese officials, I believe. So it seems to me that it's not all so pinky rosy, okay? There is some corruption as well, right? There is some corruption in China.
Oh, absolutely. But let me break it down. First of all, I graduated the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. That is the largest alumni of politicians in America, whether at the national level, the state level, Republicans or Democrats. One of the courses I took there was how to become a politician. And the professor asked, what do you need to be? You know, good looking, good at public speaking, whatever. Number one, how much money can you raise? Again, this is the West. How much money can you raise? And these corporations and donors, they don't give money for free. They give donations and they expect you to serve them. So many times the Republicans and the Democrats get donations from the same donor. That's why they're basically one and the same. There's not much difference than you think. So let's remember that about money-wise. Now, in terms about China, let me give you an example. Oh yeah, there's corruption in China. I'm not arguing with that. But here's a good example. The Chinese government, as corrupt as you think they are, guess what? 99% or probably 100% of the Chinese government agrees on. They 100% agree that the future of China must be Chinese. We're talking ethnic Chinese, 100%. So however good or bad corrupt, they view China in 10, 100, 1,000 years as it must be Chinese. Our politicians in the West, we're all replaceable. They don't care about us. They don't care about us at all. So this is kind of it's hard to, burn the candle at both ends and say, David, what's the best political system? There's corruption here, there's corruption there, and it's hard. But ultimately, I am a nationalist. And that nationalism also goes into your people. And China, the heart of China, are Chinese people. There's no Chinese people, there's no China. So that government, however corrupt you think, they are in 100% agreement that China must remain Chinese for the foreseeable future. We know in the West, and it's not just in America, in Europe, in Australia, we soon will realize that we're gone. And here's another point now while we're on it. We're not really afraid of China, Russia. You know what we're really afraid of in the West? To talk about race, to talk about gender, and me being a proud Jew, talk about the Jews. We don't talk about the Jew. I mean, these are the topics that people get really, really afraid of. But we could say, let's destroy Russia. Let's destroy China. People are like, yeah, but you start talking about race, Jews, gender, you're done. And that's what I thank China for, because I could tell you one thing, to the American people, when it comes, the American man, his biggest fear is just not to be called a racist. Kill my wife, destroy my country, rape my kids. Just please, I want to go to my grave to not be a racist. I mean, it's ideology. But I could tell you, living in China, nobody treats women, racial minorities, and immigrants better than the West. Hands down. Hands down. We treat the problem in America, which is so different than China, it's 180 degrees. If you're in China, they revere the Chinese man, revere him. on movies, on propaganda. The Chinese man is the Superman. If you're in America, you're a white Christian heterosexual man. We know it. The discrimination is getting ridiculous. So I say again to the American people, and here's something else that most people don't understand. People continue to call China communist. China's not communist. It was. There was definitely, when Deng Xiaoping took charge in about 1978, it started changing. I view China as fascism. I view China as ethno-nationalism. I view China as National Socialism. But the point is I'm telling to the Americans, you people are turning into communists. And I'm going to give you just one example. Let's use gender, because we can't talk about it. If you in America think there's no such thing different between a man and a woman, whatever, he's got a penis, she's got a vagina, but there's no difference in gender, you're a communist. You have to ask yourself, where did you learn that idea? You didn't learn it from China. I'm telling you, in China, gender is as clear as day. We in America have got to start realizing we are turning into communists, not China. China, I view as more nationalist or fascism. Now, you could say that's good or bad, but I'm telling you, they're not communists. We in America are turning into communists, and we know it. We are going to fall. And I say again, you have to ask yourself, what are the most uncomfortable or dangerous topics to talk about in the West? I guarantee it's not Russia and China. Guarantee it's not Russia or China. So what are these liberal, globalist, socialist topics that we're not allowed to talk about? That's who your enemy is.
Thank you, David. I want to ask you about this now because China is actually on my list of places to visit, definitely this year. And my followers are waiting for me to go there because they know that I planned this and they actually supported this trip. I want to know, how would you define freedom in China? Is there a sense of freedom? And if so, what kind of freedom is that?
Well, there's definitely freedom. I would say, I'm trying to simplify this, the good and the bad. So, for instance, in China, what I just talked about, the taboo topics, Jews, gender, race, it's amazing. I mean, I was not very, and here's why: most white people in the West have never been a racial minority, ever. But they love diversity. You hear that? They're like, I love racial diversity, but they've never been a racial minority. They were born and raised in all white people. When you become a racial minority, it changes your mind. The good thing about China is these topics of, like I said, gender, this and that, unbelievably open. The stuff that's said in China, never been tolerated in the West. Now, it is true, though, politics, you got to be careful in China. However, in the West, if you're right, not if you're far left. I think far left is given a free pass in the West. But if you're far right in the West, you're also screwed. So just like I said, in China, you got to be careful talking about politics. I still think, though, in the West, if you're far right, you also need to watch about politics. That's another reason why I'm censored. I'm looked upon as some far right fascist or whatever. So that. But I would say freedom, it's hard to kind of. Here's another thing that we have to ask ourselves. So my background is in leadership. So I'm going to educate people on freedom. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is family. Our family structure is destroyed in the West. We know that. You kill the father, you kill the family. We don't have family anymore. Part of the reason America's going to, even in the West. So our family has been destroyed because we're communist. Family in China, very, very important. I've changed my mind about family because China has influenced me. Family is really, really important. Now, what do I mean by freedom? So to the audience, again, this is my West Point leadership background. Let's talk about freedom and leadership. If you really, really wanted the most amount of freedom ever, don't have any friends, don't have any family. You're free. You have no commitments to anyone. Kind of lonely, don't you think? But that's American. I have no family. I have no friends. I'm just an individual. That's a lot of freedom. That's also a lonely life, right? I mean, that's why everyone in the West is on drugs now. Everyone's on drugs. Now in China, when you have family, that's good, but it's also, you have commitments, you have duties, you have a father, you have children, you have a wife. You can't just say, screw everyone. It's just me, me, me. So family, in some ways, it takes away your freedom, But hopefully what you get, I don't know, love, loyalty, a sense of purpose in life, having children. So we have to understand freedom from a leadership standpoint. If you really want to be freedom, just be a disloyal, unloyal individual your whole life, and you'll have all the freedom you want. But in China, they red pilled me. I don't think people understand. Family is very, very important. Also, respect. Where in America, like, screw my dad, screw my mom, whatever. In China, you respect your mom and dad. So that takes away some of your freedom, but you get family, and no family, no country.
So true. Thank you for saying this, because you reminded me my childhood in Poland and what I'm witnessing in Poland now. I'm not saying in every household. Of course, I don't know everyone here, but what I'm saying is the influence that's coming from the West, the way how children are responding to parents. I could not speak to parents like I see teenagers are talking to parents nowadays here. It's absolutely true. And I think when you don't have family, when you don't have this bond, that's what they want. They want to influence you. Look at those big corporations who are influencing the youngest customer base, because the youngest people are becoming the future customers, so they can sell the products.
And I think the difference is China, it goes back to my earlier discussion. They want the future of China to be Chinese. Well, you need babies, you need families, it's important. In the West, they don't care. Like, if it's like, hey, I don't have enough money to support a family, or I need to do, they're like, dude, either make a family or we're going to replace you with immigrants. That's how it is. They don't care. They'll just, what the corporations like is cheap labor and obedient labor. These corporations, again, I work for both the Boeing Corporation and Amazon in China, and I see how these corporations are. They're scumbags. They're globalists. They have no loyalty to America. So that's why, if you say, why is family being destroyed in America? It's the same thing like a corporation just laying off workers. They don't care. I mean, they'll lay, and that's why I've said America is no longer a country. It's a corporation. So if you really want to study America's ideology, it's not coming from China, Russia. Go to a multinational globalist corporation's HR, HR, how they view about managing employees. That's American culture. We get it. We get it from Hollywood. We get it from everything. That is not coming from China or Russia. That's coming from the corporations who are our masters. So you have kids, you don't have kids, they don't care.
David, how do you see the future of United States?
Sure.
And also, what advice would you give to someone who still lives in the United States at this point?
Sure. So I believe remember this phrase, Donald Trump, America first, which, oh, by the way, that's China first, Russia first. That's a nationalism. That's why I do think Trump is more popular, because he has this nationalist theory. However, I'm going to break it to the American public. America first is a day late and a dollar short. You could believe me now or believe me later, this country's going down. The new motto is going to be state first. Now, there's a time in America history called the Civil War. Me, as a West Point graduate, I have a lot of intimate knowledge of the Civil War, because we study a lot at West Point, because West Point was so infused in the Civil War. Most people don't know, but General Lee, the famous general, or President Davis of the Confederacy, who was a West Point graduate. At that time, you swore your oath to your state, not to the country. So General Lee, he swore his oath to the state of Virginia. So when Civil War broke out, the state of Virginia said, General Lee, come back to Virginia and defend us. So what do I mean? I believe the federal level, it's over, people. And you are going to start seeing more and more people say state first, then America first, and then, whatever, the world third. But you are going to see, just like how I left America, you're seeing people leave blue states, go to the red states. What you're going to witness in America is, normally we don't know governors that well, right? The president, but who are you are going to see red state governors reach new levels of political influence, like popularity. And the future legal battle is going to be state law versus federal law. You're going to start seeing states push back. And so when people say, how is this civil war going to be? You give it time. You are going to start seeing red states sooner or later pull back and away from the federal government more and more and more. And it's going to be clashes. But I say again, I think the federal level, the national level, like President Trump, he's not going to save it. 100%. You're going to walk. I mean, I'd be amazed if Donald Trump gets back in the office. But if you're an American patriot and you really think we're going to take America back, and I need to say this too, because it's important, because it's also part of the communist ideology in America. You hear this all the time. David, stop being so divisive. We need to come together. You hear that all the time. We need to come together as a people. We need to stop being divisive. Come together, come together. Okay, well, you need to stop your communist ideology of diversity is our strength. You need to ask yourself, where did you learn this communist ideology? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't say we want more diversity, more diversity, more diversity, and then you're like, why don't we have unity? Because unity and diversity are mutually exclusive. So either we're going to have more diversity, which means we're more divisive, or maybe we're going to say, maybe diversity is not our strength. And I believe a little diversity, about 10% is. We're past it now. It's going to get worse. I'm telling you, without a doubt, this plane is going to crash. It could be a soft landing. It could be a hard landing, but this plane is coming down. 100%, you're going to see it.
So there will be a split within the country, it seems like to me, and there will be new countries born from the states that, or maybe regions, let's say some regions within the United States.
So people, now remember, people, this is not conspiracy theories. You know, powers collapse. Look at the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed, but I want to compare it to the Soviet Union. So don't fool yourself. It's possible where the Soviet Union was a global power, it collapsed, but it's still a strong regional power. So when I say America's going to collapse, it may not be what you're thinking, like Mad Max and the Thunderdome, everything's in rubble. Rubble. It may be America collapsing from a global power to a regional power. The problem is it's different than the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, their satellite states in Eastern Europe remained sovereign, and they basically collapsed down to Russia. You know, so Russia remained. The problem is in America, if we collapse, we're going to split. So it gets more confusing. It gets more complicated. Wait a minute, who has the military base? Wait a minute, no, the nukes are in North Dakota. So I take, as people know what I'm talking about. It's going to get more complicated. Where when the Soviet Union collapsed, everything went back to their sovereign states, the satellite Eastern Europe, and Russia remained Russia. A weaker than the Soviet Union, but Russia was still Russia. We're not going to do that, though. If you think we're going to remain 50 states intact, there's no way. You give it more time, you're going to see it. It's going. So that makes it much more complicated and much more violent because there's a lot of guns in America. And I believe the impetus is going to be economic. You're going to see the U.S. So to the American people, this is how dangerous it is. I'm a West Point graduate. I'm part of the military. Let's go back to President Nixon when he took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard. Because I'm telling you, this U.S. dollar's done. So it's amazing. Many people ask me, they said, David, how is the U.S. dollar still, believable? Why do people still have faith in the U.S. dollar? Why hasn't it collapsed yet? You hear that a lot, and it will. You have to ask yourself, what replaced the gold? Now, people could say faith. Yeah, but we have faith in anything. You could have faith in crypto, faith in gold. It's still faith, but you have to have faith in something. So the U.S. dollar is not backed by gold. What is it backed by? It's backed by the United States military because people around the world are still afraid of U.S. naval aircraft carriers, U.S. Air Force jets, the United States Marine Corps, Army Rangers. People are still intimidated by America because we will destroy you and kill you. However, how's the U.S. military doing? Is the military crumbling? Oh, yes, it is. You are going to see. So people ask me, what is that U.S. dollar? When is that going to, when the and that goes to Taiwan, I could explain it. But when the United States military is no longer looked upon as a lethal force, and we saw that when we pulled out of Afghanistan, which was a horrible war to begin with. But once people lose faith around the world that the U.S. military is not the biggest bully, because that's what we are, we're just a big bully, the U.S. dollar's gone.
All right, so here I would like to stay within this topic. This is perfect segue. Before we started the live stream, you've mentioned that you were in NATO. And I want to ask you about NATO, since you know I'm currently still in Poland. Would like to move out to a country that name starts with R, by the way. That's another problem, to mention the full name on certain platforms that can be removed, you know, because you mentioned the name of the country. How is NATO doing, in your opinion, David? And, you know, they are trying to pull out of their tricks another shenanigan story with pushing certain countries into Ukrainian region to keep on poking the bear that is our country. How is NATO? What do you think about the situation right now?
So I served in NATO as a U.S. Army officer. I was stationed in Germany in the military bases there, deployed in the Balkans. What I would like to do is, before I get into NATO, which relates it, when people talk about the fall of the American empire, it's horrible, it's horrible. Well, I could tell you one good part. If you're a Western country, Germany, Britain, Canada, Australia, you're an American colony, whether you know that or not, or admit it. But NATO is the U.S. European military. The NATO is there because the U.S. military, we fund it, we equip it, and we lead it. We're in charge. When I was in NATO, I didn't take orders from any other, a Brit, a French, a German. I'm in charge because we're Americans. So when people say, oh my God, when America collapses, it's going to be so horrible. I don't know. If you're a Western country, do you really want to be an American colony? Or maybe you want one day to be a sovereign country. And trust me, Germany is totally controlled by America. So back to the NATO. So what I want to do is make it very clear. So I'm half Jewish, half German. My mom is German and my father's Jewish. And I make it clear what I'm about to say to NATO is very similar to what I say to Israel. So I believe that American taxpayers, American military, we're going a little could be a small statement, but we fund Israel. We protect Israel. And I'm wondering, we're going too far. It's time for Israel to take care of themselves. We could still be an ally. Now, I'm also German. It is time for the Europeans to fund their own military. They could do it. They're big boys. They're not little kids anymore. It is time for American taxpayers to start helping out Americans first. Let the French, let the British. What's even amazing is the Ukraine conflict is obviously in Europe. You would expect the European powers to be the first and foremost to decide what to do. You got America, which is way over in the Atlantic Ocean, telling the Germans, the Brits, the French what to do in Ukraine. But if something bad happens there and there's a nuclear war, well, it's the Europeans that are gonna, really get hurt. So I say again, it is time for America to stop funding NATO. These are European countries. They have, does anyone not believe that Germany has the capability of building a military? That it's in their DNA. They could do it. It is time to stop spending taxpayer money on there. And so it's similar to what I look at Israel, but I think NATO at the end of the day is just not worth the blood and the treasure for Americans. Europe is in Europe. Let the European powers take charge. They can do it. Have faith in them.
Yes, but look at the other aspect of this here, since I speak from this side. It's not just United States citizens, taxpayers' money that go to support certain war projects, because it's actually European countries whose economies are being destroyed by the same globalists, by the same Wall Street corporation ideas and narrative and agenda. And it's actually our money that is going to buy the military equipment that is coming from United States. So this is the full circle here. And it's people, I don't know how to put this into simple words, because this is not just that US citizen is suffering. This is every citizen of other country that is involved in this project that is suffering.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to relate NATO to the European Union. I'm not a fan of the European Union. I thought Brexit is a great idea. Here, we're going to make it really simple. And we're going to show to the people who always like to say, Western Europe, they got such a great system. No, they're not. They're dependent on America. It's very simple. When America collapses, just like when the Soviet Union collapsed, the Soviet soldiers in East Germany, they had to leave. They left. When America collapses, we are going to pull out of NATO. When NATO collapses, the European Union's done. People, again, don't realize that the European Union, like NATO, is an American experiment. It's an American puppet. So I say again, when America collapses, just like the Soviet Union, we're going to pull our troops. I was actually stationed, similar to my name, BAUMBLATT. It's called Baumholder in Germany. It's the largest concentration of U.S. soldiers outside of America, over 20,000 U.S. troops in Germany. We're going to pull out. NATO's gone. European Union's gone. But, because everyone says, oh my God, the sky's falling, it's horrible. But now, the European countries, they're going to have sovereign control over their money, their people, their country, instead of being an American colony. Now, after that, well, you're Europeans. You got to figure it out, what you want to do, what you want to spend it on. But it's at least now you're not following the orders of America, what to do. I mean, it's so pathetic. I mean, Americans, I don't think they realize it, but the Europeans, they follow America's orders. It's just pathetic. It really is. It's so pathetic in a way. That's probably the difference between Israel. Israel, I would say Europe is an American colony. Sometimes people say America is a Jewish colony. Israel sometimes gives orders back, but Europe, no way. I'm telling you, NATO, we give the orders, and the European, what Germany and the Europe have done to their economy, their energy, by going with America against Russia, they're destroying themselves. I don't have much respect. It's kind of like a woman looks at a weak man, and the man is so weak that even she doesn't have respect for the man anymore. When she looks at a weak man, she's like, I can't even respect. That's kind of how I am with the Europeans. They're just so weak that I don't know what to do. It's just so pathetic that you're just wondering in your head. You're like, why do they even put up with this? But they don't mind. America's the boss.
Well, but this is again another side story here, because the countries that are run by the puppet governments that are put in the position that don't really represent the nation. And even if people say, well, you voted for them, unfortunately, in my opinion, all the elections are rigged. This is how I think. And I think no one is really, this one is winning. No, it's all staged. They put people in the positions to run the show as they want those people, those puppets, to run the show. And who is paying the price? The regular person, the regular citizen, who unfortunately might still, there is a very high chance, have to send their children to the war that none of those politicians will be going to fight. Here is the question. How do you see the military complex? Let's say all of this collapses, which in a way would be a tragedy and a blessing at the same time. So when this happens, how do you see the military complex going forward? And what's going to happen with all those contracts? For example, Poland has signed, and many other countries, for the military equipment.
Sure. So back to your question is, you're right, meaning the European Union, NATO, they serve America. Your European Union politicians, they serve America. They don't serve the citizens of Europe. It is what it is, but it's horrible, and I agree. So your question is spot on. At the end of the day, who has the guns? Meaning the American military. This is why what is propping up the U.S. dollar? I say again, it's called the U.S. military. So now the question is where's this military going? And also, we got to remember that if you want a big, strong military like America does, it's expensive. So we print more dollars. Sooner or later, we can't do this anymore. You want a big, strong military. We spend more on our budget than over 50% of the countries in the world, all their military budgets combined, still doesn't equal American military. So we have to say, it's like the Roman Empire. I still believe the Achilles heel is going to be economic, because just like the Roman Empire overextended their military campaigns, they ran out of money. So I still think the US dollar running out of money is going to be the impetus for the US military. However, anyone with common sense knows that the US military, our intelligence, our security, is not going to voluntarily say, I guess we're just going to give up and, we don't have money and we're just going to crumble. We're not going to do that. You know that. This corrupt government in America and the military is going to get what you're going to see. It's going to get more and more radicalized to the point of when I was in the FBI, we would look at these evil regimes like China, like Russia, like North Korea. And in the FBI, this is from management, would be teaching us, and they would say, these regimes will do anything they need to do to stay in power because they're evil. The problem in America is we Americans never really know what it's like for our country to really fall apart. We were blessed with the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. Canada's a friendly country. Mexico's got some drug issues, but we were really blessed with such a safe country that even the 9/11 terrorist attack, we were attacked, but our country was not going to crumble because of some attack. So we don't even know what our government will do. I'm telling you, our United States government, if you think our government is going to fall, but they're going to still respect the rule of law, the Constitution, no way. This government is going to get tyrannical. And we may, like we always do, start yet another war to change the political spectrum, to change the narrative, to keep domestic violence overseas. So I tell the American people, when this America starts falling, and that's why I disagree with these Americans that always say, I back law enforcement, I back the blue, I back military. Yeah, keep it up. One of these days, they're going to have a gun pointed on you. There's a reason why the United States government is recruiting more and more foreigners to serve in the U.S. military. One, red, white, and blue American men like me, I'm not dying for this country, this corrupt country. So they're having a trouble recruiting guys like me. When you start filling the United States military with more foreigners, when martial law is declared, and it will, these people are going to have a higher percentage of killing you. So I say again, I come from a strong military background, but I believe this United States military, this FBI, this law enforcement is going to turn tyrannical. And when this economy drops, when our freedoms go away, we are going to get authoritarian in America. And we are probably, we're the only country that launched nuclear weapons in the history. So, America, I keep saying, we are probably the most violent country that's ever walked the earth. So when I talk about violence and people are like, no, never, are you kidding me? We are going to go violent. And we're going to go violent not just overseas, we're going to go violent domestically. If you're an American citizen and you step out of line politically, now I'm not saying just politically, when this country starts crumbling, it's over for you. FBI is going to be knocking on the door and taking you away, just like January 6th. So again, I think America is the biggest threat to world peace.
Thank you, David. And one more question, since we already are into 1 hour, I would like to ask you, what is the main intention for the book that you have written? What is the main message that you want to send with your book?
Yeah, so originally I didn't plan on writing a book. That was going to be testimony for the congressmen senators. I totally believed that the congressmen senators, we would have been working out this in private. When I was ignored, I said, well, let me put it in the book. What I would say is this. I graduated West Point. West Point's known for leadership. I'm not impressed with West Point now. Everything's falling. But what you would expect is leadership. We have a leadership crisis in America. It's everywhere. And that leadership crisis is going to take America to civil war, collapse, revolution. This empire is falling. And what I would say to the Americans is this. Part of nationalism, you have to define who we are. I came up with 3 words. It's called faith, family, and freedom. Faith. We are a Judeo-Christian country. I know people don't like saying Judaism. Fine. We'll say Christian country first. We could have some Jews. It's okay. I'm a Jew. But we are a Judeo-Christian country. 2, we are a European country. That's what we are. We're a European country. At least we were. And we value freedom. And I'm telling you, that's what we need to start focusing on, because it's not going to be about the Republicans and the Democrats. It's going to be about the nationalists and the globalists. And sooner or later, you're going to remember a story about this guy named David Baumblett talking about government corruption destroying my life. It's going to come for you. I have no doubt, because I lead by example. I left America in 2010, and everything that I predicted, I'm going to double down. It's coming for you. It's going to get worse.
Thank you, David. What is the best way to support you and where people can find you?
Sure. My first video on YouTube was censored. I was also suspended on Twitter, but I'm on my third. The best is Rumble. Just go to David Baumblett. I did open up my third account on Twitter. Just look again, David Baumblett, but probably Twitter. Hopefully I don't get suspended again. And go to Rumble, just David Baumblett. And then you can find my website if you're interested in my book.
Perfect. So those two links, I will attach the Twitter, which is not there already, down below the live stream. I think we will connect again. I will have more questions for you. Definitely would like to hear your questions, guys. So put in the comments down below. Some of you are in the live stream, but I want to see down below this live stream as well. Anything else you would like to add before we disconnect, David? Anything
No,
else?
I mean, the only thing I would say to the American people is, part of the reason our government is going down, ask yourself as an American citizen, if you have government corruption to report, what do? Ask yourself in mind. Write to congressmen and senators. I did, but it's an interesting question. We want to stop government. You are an American citizen and you have government corruption to report. What do? Who do you go? But by the thought that I'm censored, you know there's a bigger problem in America. You don't censor an American citizen, military veteran who has government to corrupt. You get transparency, you get out in the open, and then if anyone thinks my story is false or fraud, you let the light shine to it, and let's see. But you don't censor and be quiet. And to all the brotherhood of the military, the FBI, they're not reaching out to me, that should also make you wonder, what's going on? Something is very strange going on.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for emailing me, for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate, and for standing for what is right and for putting up with all of this. I think many people would give up already, and many people would be easily silenced because it's not convenient and it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the point is again, I'm not saying education's overrated, but sometimes you do some good class. When I was at Harvard, about leadership, mobilizing people. And at the end of the day, most people in the West are fat, dumb, and happy, so they don't do anything. So what are the levers? Economics and security, your money and your freedom. Once those levers start moving, that activates people. So even if someone says, I agree with David, but his belly's full, he's got money in the bank, he's fine. But all of a sudden, he loses his job, the police knock on his door, that's what mobilizes people. It's about security and economics, and it's going to get worse. Then you're going to start seeing people say, we need to do something.
Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support. And make sure to share this video, click on the links down below, look at the book that David has written, and support him, because, not many people fight nowadays, and this is not the time to be a coward, I say. Thank you, guys.